before events, or more likely to benefit their already established positions. But the main reason is quite simple. They want control. All psychopaths have delusions of grandeur, and the elite are no different. They want more power over quote-unquote inferior people. They want to destroy their competition, whether it's domestic or international. They don't have remorse. They don't have empathy. They're very cunning and manipulative. And the elite use crisis as a very powerful tool to drive masses into the corral faster than they otherwise would have. One drawback from shock as a power tool is that it's temporary in nature. The subject is never to have a sense of normalcy to regain their mental footing if shock is to be effective. That's why we were constantly hammered with Osama boogeyman terror alerts and the Homeland Security Advisor coming out that today was an orange day or a yellow day, never a low or guarded day. It was always something bad was going to happen. Education and truth are enemies of mental shock. If you can foresee these tactics, or then you can actually mentally prepare for the shock, and at the very least it'll put you ahead of the crowd. Another enemy of shock is people getting together and talking. Issues are less ominous when people can share their educated experiences and they feel less alone and less helpless. Death by 1,000 cuts. Gradualism is the elite's machine that churns every day. You might not notice it, but it is there, gradually taking away our freedoms and our wealth.
Our conversation is with Mr. Yuri Alexandrovich Bezmenov. Mr. Bezmenov was born in 1939 in a suburb of Moscow. He was the son of a high-ranking Soviet Army officer. He was educated in the elite schools inside the Soviet Union and became an expert in Indian culture and Indian languages. He had an outstanding career with Novosti, which was and still is, I should say, the press arm or the press agency of the Soviet Union. It turns out that this is also a front for the KGB. He escaped to the West in 1970 after becoming totally disgusted with the Soviet system, and he did this at great risk to his life. He certainly is one of the world's outstanding experts on the subject of Soviet propaganda and disinformation and active measures. When the Soviets use the phrase ideological subversion, what do they mean by it?
Ideological subversion is the process which is legitimate, overt, and open. You can see it with your own eyes. All you have to do, all American mass media has to do, is to unplug their bananas from their ears, open up their eyes, and they can see it. There is no mystery. There is nothing to do with espionage. I know that espionage intelligence gathering looks more romantic. It sells more deodorants through the advertising, probably. That's why your Hollywood producers are so crazy about James Bond type of thrillers. But in reality, the main emphasis of the KGB is not in the area of intelligence at all. According to my opinion and opinion of many defectors of my caliber, only about 15% of time, money, and manpower is spent on espionage as such. The other 85% is a slow process which we call either ideological subversion or active measures, активные мероприятия in the language of the KGB, or psychological warfare. What it basically means is to change the perception of reality of every American to such an extent that despite of the abundance of information, no one is able to come to sensible conclusions in the interests of defending themselves, their families, their community, and their country. It's a great brainwashing process which goes very slow, and it's divided in 4 basic stages. The first one being demoralization. It takes from 15 to 20 years to demoralize a nation. Why that many years? Because this is the minimum number of years which requires to educate one generation of students in the country of your enemy, exposed to the ideology of the enemy. In other words, Marxism-Leninism ideology is being pumped into the soft heads of at least 3 generations of American students without being challenged or counterbalanced by the basic values of Americanism, American patriotism. The demoralization process in the United States is basically completed already. For the last 25 years. Actually, it's overfulfilled because demoralization now reaches such areas where previously not even Comrade Andropov and all his experts would even dream of such a tremendous success. Most of it is done by Americans to Americans, thanks to lack of moral standards. As I mentioned before, exposure to true information does not matter anymore. A person who was demoralized is unable to assess true information. The facts tell nothing to him. Even if I shower him with information, with authentic proof, with documents, with pictures, even if I take him by force to the Soviet Union and show him concentration camp, he will refuse to believe it until he is going to receive a kick in his fat bottom. When a military boot crashes his, then he will understand, but not before that. That's the tragic of the situation of demoralization. So the next stage is destabilization. This time, subverter does not care about your ideas and the patterns of your consumption. Whether you eat junk food and get fat and flabby, it doesn't matter anymore. This time, and it takes only from 2 to 5 years to destabilize a nation. What matters is essentials: economy, foreign relations, defense systems. And you can see it quite clearly that in some areas, in such sensitive areas as defense and economy, the influence of Marxist-Leninist ideas in the United States is absolutely fantastic. I could never believe it 14 years ago when I landed in this part of the world that the process will go that fast. The next stage, of course, is crisis. It may take only up to 6 weeks to bring a country to the verge of crisis. You can see it in Central America now. And after crisis, with a violent change of power, structure, and economy, you have so-called the period of normalization. It may last indefinitely. Normalization is a cynical expression borrowed from Soviet propaganda. When the Soviet tanks moved into Czechoslovakia in '68, Comrade Brezhnev said, "Now the situation in brotherly Czechoslovakia is normalized." This is what will happen in the United States if you allow all these schmucks to bring the country to crisis, to promise people all kind of goodies and the paradise on earth, to destabilize your economy, to eliminate the principle of free market competition, and to put a big brother government in Washington, D.C.
Ideological subversion. It takes 15 to 20 years to demoralize a nation. I think we're well past that. This was recorded in 1985, and you know, I don't think it's any stretch of the imagination that we are not as mentally as strong as we were back in 1985. Then there's a 3 to 5 year destabilization period, and this is where we start seeing institutions fail, stress in society. I think we're experiencing the tail end of that now. And then all it takes is a crisis, that right moment to switch everything over. And you know, this could be coming up shortly or in another couple of years, but the point is that the crisis basically shows the weaknesses of all the stress from the destabilization, and then afterwards a new paradigm is formed, and it could be one of, you know, tyranny or freedom, depending on how demoralized the nation is. Decisions on technological adaptation, implementation, and use at local authority levels are often not one-shot events. Instead, they are characterized by a multiple sequence of decisions made across a tiered hierarchy. A process is called disjointed incrementalism. The decision-making sequence starts with the conceptual or strategic policy type decisions at the apex, or the elite, followed by semi-conceptual or semi-strategic plans and programs, culminating in the detailed or specific project-related decisions. That's from the United Nations Environmental Program. But it gives you an insight on how the elite look at a gradual process of changing societies. In fact, they even have a map of it here where they mapped it out. And you can see that same process where at the very top there's a tiered elite that basically set forth an agenda, a grand strategy. And it's up to local authorities, whether they're senators, presidents, heads of foundations, the brain power to actually, to put it into motion. And then as it goes down, it becomes more detailed and more defined until you have a complete process. Gradualism is all those laws and taxes and propaganda that are forced on us every day. It is worth it for all those special interest groups to work very diligently to get special laws passed. But for the mass of society, none of them are big enough to start campaigns of awareness to stop them. But put together, they are an incredible attack on our freedoms. I am sure that you got this email before, but it's amazing how gradualism can change a society. This is an email I got a while ago. I'm sure it's been passed around. Oh, all the kids who were born in the 1930s, 40s, 50s, 60s, and 70s. First, we survived being born to mothers who smoked and drank while they carried us. They took aspirin, ate blue cheese dressing, tuna from the can, and didn't get tested for diabetes. Then after that trauma, our baby cribs were covered in bright-colored lead-based paints. We had no child-proof lids on medicine bottles or doors or cabinets. When we rode our bikes, we had no helmets, not to mention the risks we took hitchhiking. As children, we would ride in cars with no seatbelts or airbags. We drank from the garden hose and not from a bottle. We shared one soft drink with 4 friends, and from one bottle, no one actually died from this. We ate cupcakes, white bread, real butter, drank soda pop with sugar in it. But we weren't overweight because we were always outside playing. We would leave home in the morning, play all day, as long as we were back by the time the streetlights came on. No one was able to reach us all day, and we were okay. We would spend hours building our go-karts from scraps and then ride down the hill only to find that we forgot to put on the brakes. After running into the bushes a few times, we learned to solve that problem.